It's always a good Monday morning when Mike Gill is in the house. I am so excited, Mike, after that game yesterday. I thought that was one of the more dominant performances I've seen from this team since the Super Bowl year in 2017.
Yeah, I figured today would be a tough day for the complaining crowd, which is generally what people like to do the day after a game. Now, I'm sure you could say, well, they had too many penalties. Okay, sure. That would be at the top of the list. But other than that, that game yesterday, it was just an absolute up and down the field butt whooping. I mean, they just absolutely took that team to the cleaners. And, you know, a lot of people thought that Tennessee would not only come into the link and win that game, but physically beat you up. And they just took Tennessee completely out of everything they wanted to do. And just never made it a game. I mean, Tennessee never felt like they were in that game, period. Total domination yesterday. And that's with the penalties. Imagine what they would have done to that team had they not been so sloppy. Total domination in all facets of the game.
Yeah, you know, I think we learned the truth about Tennessee. I don't think people wanted to admit they're just good enough to win the AFC South. They're a good team, but they're not beating the Kansas City Chiefs. They're not beating the Cincinnati Bengals. They're not beating the Buffalo Bills. I mean, they're probably the sixth best team in the AFC.
Yeah, I mean, look, I like Tennessee a lot in terms of like what they are and who they try to be, but never buy into them right now as a Super Bowl contender. Last year, 13 wins, number one seed, couldn't get it done. I think that told us all we need to know about their ceiling. Good, solid team. They can test you at times. But it's like a team. They're like, that team, kind of like what the Lions were early, where they play hard and they just didn't have enough talent. Tennessee plays really hard all the time. You can't play like that every single week and expect to win. Like some weeks you just don't have it. You just can't play hard every single week, and that's your way that you win. I'm not saying they didn't play hard yesterday. They just didn't have it yesterday. They just had nothing. They had no answers. Look, they're playing a lot of man defense. I mean, that's a terrible defensive matchup for Philadelphia because of two things. One, the Eagles are so talented at wide receiver. You saw that yesterday. You're going to man them up. They're going to kill you. And you play man defense with a guy like Jalen Hurts. Now, you didn't even see this yesterday. You know, you're playing man, he sees numbers, he takes off. Well, he didn't even take off yesterday. He just said, you go play man, I'm going to throw it up and I'm going to beat you. Hurts was, if we had questions about MVP and I was leaning Mahomes and you would say, all right, well, what's Hurts' kind of signature game? Well, that would have been last week when he ran for a lot of yards. And you're like, well, MVP voters. Now, I'm not an MVP voter, but I got to imagine most of them will vote historic passing yards or touchdowns. But then yesterday he throws that game up and he's like, you don't like what I'm doing when running? All right, I'll throw for 400 yards. I know he was short of 400, but he could have well eclipsed 400 yards
yesterday.
He could have well eclipsed 400 yards. And so that was kind of his signature game yesterday. And I don't know what the hell Tennessee's, game plan was, hey, we're going to play man against A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith. I guess that's what they do. But this is where sometimes these coaches, they do what they do, and they don't like to get out of it. And that was not a good matchup for them yesterday. We thought going in, the Eagles should be able to move the ball through the air. They could have thrown the ball down the field all day long if they felt like it.
Even better than playing man against Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown, they decided to play man with an undrafted rookie cornerback against A.J. Brown. Disrespect. A.J. Brown made sure they significantly missed him because over on the other side, I'm looking at guys like Nick Westbrook or Keeney. And once Treylon Burks was out, oh, man, did they have nothing to throw to.
Well, we knew coming in their passing game was limited, and then Burks had kind of come on the last couple of weeks. He had become more of a part of their offense the last 3-4 weeks. And then once he took that shot and had to leave the game, their passing game was nil. And quite frankly, let's talk about it. Like we were concerned about Derrick Henry in the run game. I'm not saying that the Eagles took them it wasn't that they dominated like in terms of taking them out. I thought Tennessee just got away from it. I don't think they tried to run the ball or they weren't consistently trying. But that being said, Henry didn't do much when they did try to run the ball. The Eagles' run defense was up to the task. They got pressure with 4 all day long. It was just a dominant effort. I mean, there are some people that I saw early in the game complaining about John Gannon not blitzing and this and that. I said, my gosh, like they had what, not 6 sacks yesterday?
They don't have to blitz. Why do people want this Buddy Ryan defense that didn't win shit?
Just, a lot of fans go with what they're familiar with, and they feel comfortable with what they grew up on. A lot of people watching and listening in this region, Jim Johnson blitzed a lot. Buddy Ryan blitzed a lot. So that's what they know, and that's what they like. So that's what makes them feel comfortable. When they're watching a game, that's what they relate to of what I remember growing up. I remember my team blitzing. So that's what they're now inclined to do. I had Malcolm Jenkins on my show last week, and I flat out asked him, does John Gannon, do you think he needs to blitz more? He says, I do not. Basically, his reaction was, teams that blitz is like a gimmick offense. You need a gimmick to try to do something because you're not good enough. The Eagles' defense, in his mind, is good enough that they don't need to blitz. They don't need the gimmick to get to the quarterback. So, look, they had – I don't know why people yesterday would watch that game thinking you got to end up blitzing more. The one team you don't need to blitz is Tennessee. I mean, they don't do anything. They have no weapons. Was it frustrating to see Tannehill take off a couple times? All right, sure.
You let it go. It's empty calories.
Exactly. Until people understand. First off, if you watched yesterday, there was a bunch of games I was watching yesterday. I felt like every time someone blitzed, they got blitzed. I mean, I saw the blitz work so infrequently yesterday. But that being said, I don't know. There's people just want to see. They like action. That's what happens. They like the action. They like seeing the crash. So
the quarterback gets sacked 6 times. They have the second most sacks in the NFL. They have the best pass defense in the NFL. They're a top 5 defense in the National Football League, and people want to see a crash. I'll tell you what. You know what tells me? People don't know football.
No, well, that's probably higher on the list of them wanting to see the crash. But that being said, John Gannon's going to get a head coaching job, and people are going to say, thank God, this guy's an idiot. Get rid of him. You don't get a head coaching job by being an idiot. You get a head coaching job because people think you do a really good job. And right now, you just ripped it off. The Eagles were second in passing yards allowed, second in total yards allowed. They're top 10 in points against. They're third or second in the league in sacks. I mean, this is the game today. Like, I don't think get that either. Is blitzing was good at a time when they let you hit people. You blitz, there's a good chance that you're going to get a flag for hitting the quarterback too high, hitting the quarterback too low, hitting the quarterback not right in the perfect spot. So sending blitzes sometimes, you're dealing with fire in terms of hitting the quarterback. Also, it's not conducive to the game they play today. How many teams in this league, if you watch around the league, and that's part of the problem, a lot of people don't. I mean, I know this is Good Morning NFC East, so you're watching a bunch of teams in this area, but a lot of teams run the same defense the Eagles run. They run that Vic Fangio style of defense, which is not a blitzing defense. There's not a lot of teams around the league. And if you look at the numbers, out of the top 10, this was a couple of weeks ago, 6 of the top 10 teams in football that blitz are not very good football teams, much like Malcolm Jenkins said. They're kind of gimmicky teams that just don't have the talent. He said his quote was actually very interesting. He said, any defensive coordinator worth his salt does not blitz because he does not want to have to leave guys like me, the safety, sitting back there all by myself. Like I as Malcolm Jenkins, don't want to see my team blitzing in front of me either. And he said, this team doesn't have to. So I don't watch that game yesterday asking why don't they blitz more. I watched that game yesterday saying, man, they really had a dominating effort on the defensive side of the ball.
And that's what I don't think people understand. Like, even the bad quarterbacks in this league are better than those so-called bad quarterbacks from the 90s. Perfect example, right? I'll bring Rodney Peete into the conversation. I hate to bust on Rodney Peete here. When did you ever think Rodney Peete was going to beat you with a 30, 40, 50-yard throw?
Not only that, the quarterbacks in that era were less apt to take off and run.
Oh,
you know, you didn't really think of that. So that's another, difference in the games today too. But, I think it was Reuben Frank who tweeted out that the Eagles in the second half of the last, 6, 7, 8 games have given up 1 touchdown.
Yeah. It's been as good as the 49ers, honestly, if not better.
Yeah, I mean, they've given up 1 touchdown in the second half. I'll have to bring it back over. Maybe Tone's watching back there can take a look at it. But it was like an eye-opening number of, look, who the hell cares how many yards you give up? I don't know why we care about yards between the 20s. They're not giving up touchdowns. The one difference, in some of the games, the Packer game that they ended up winning, but the difference in that game was they did give up touchdowns to the Packers. In the first half of that game, they gave up 6 instead of 3. All year long, they've been giving up 3 instead of 6. It's going to happen. You just hope it doesn't happen at the wrong time. And I get it. People want perfection, but yesterday was about as good as you're going to get, save for the penalties.
The best play of the game yesterday, in my opinion, I know everybody wants to talk about the Hurts-Brown throw, but I thought the turning point of that game was, and the Titans helped the Eagles out because they had a false start on 3rd and 1 from the 8, but it ended up being 3rd and 6 from the 13. And Josh Sweat got home and sacked up Ryan Tannehill, and Titans had the kick, and it was 14-10. And I'm like, you know what? The Eagles went right back down the field and scored.
Yeah, there was a couple. That one, the Brandon Graham had a sack too. That was a pretty. It was a moment that was just a deflating spot in the game. Yeah, I mean, look. And Tennessee's deep offensive line isn't great either. They had some guys banged up on that line. So, but that's what you get in this league a lot. You don't get a lot of good offensive line play. You get times where you should be able to. And look, the sack doesn't mean you didn't do your job if you pressure or hurry. There was a play in the game last night in the Cowboys game against the Colts where, and they brought it up, Collingsworth brought it up on the broadcast, that they didn't blitz, they didn't sack him, but the pressure from the play before forced Ryan to throw the ball faster than he wanted to. It was down in the red zone, and this is when the game was close. Remember, that game was a 2-point game at one point. My God. But the fact that the pressure just kept coming, even if you're not getting the quarterback down, sometimes the pressure is enough to get the quarterback to throw the ball early or take his timing off, and the Eagles are masterful at that.
Here's the thing. Like, when you look at this Eagles team, if you're facing a quarterback that stands in the pocket a lot, like I'm looking at you, Tom Brady, because you need that, they're going to eat a team like the Bucs up for lunch just because he can't escape. Like, the teams I worry about are honestly the Justin Fieldses of the world that can take off and can make a defense bad. But again, Justin Fields, if you keep him contained and keep him in the pocket, as we saw Green Bay's defense do yesterday, he's in effect, he has the lowest passer rating in the fourth quarter of any quarterback, as good as he looks like he can be.
Yeah, well, and your point about the getting, it's interesting because yesterday was a possibly changing game in terms of the way you feel about this. I think a lot of people like San Francisco, and without Garoppolo now, what is that team? We have no clue what Purdy's going to look like in terms of that offense and what kind of player he's going to be. That was the one team that you were kind of concerned about the style they play. Now, Dallas last night, you're going to look at the score if you watch that game and say, man, what a massacre. I mean, that was a close game that they had to fight through until the fourth quarter when, oh my God, the Colts just unraveled and fell apart. I mean, fumble, interception, fumble. It was horrible. But they were every bit in that game. But Dallas is a team, the quarterback can move. Minnesota, they have problems because Cousins doesn't move a lot, so they're a good matchup for what you try to do. So it'll be interesting to see as this defense continues to, get its sea legs under them. Linval Joseph's only been here 3 weeks. Sue's only been here 3 weeks. Now you got Jordan Davis back. You're going to get Avonte Maddox back. hopefully you end up getting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson back. That didn't hurt not having him yesterday. I think Blankenship was probably a better fit for yesterday's style of game than Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So the Eagles still have ammunition coming back. And here's something else we can kind of shift the conversation is they put up 40 points last week, 35 this week, and they still don't have Goddard out there.
It's insane, right? Tony and I brought that up earlier today. They all have Dallas Goddard, and yet they still put up back-to-back performances of 450 yards and, like you said, 35 points. I wanted to get into this a little bit too, Mike, because this is Good Morning NFC East, and we do have to talk about a little bit about the NFC.
Real quick, the stat was, and Tone got it, touchdowns after halftime allowed by the Eagles the last 6 games. They've given up 1.
That's insane.
1 to the Packers. They did not give up a touchdown to the Steelers, Texans, Commanders, Colts, or Titans.
Oh, and that was a backup quarterback that was in there who they did not game plan for.
Yeah, well, 1. I'll take 1.
Yeah, so Dallas, I mean, not Dallas. I don't know why I mentioned Dallas. I don't want to mention Dallas right now. I want to mention the Giants and the Commanders because that was a big game yesterday. And one of my overreactions, reality checks in my piece for CBS was that game did not hurt the Giants. The Giants are still in a prime position to go to the playoff. I had no problem with Brian Dable playing for that tie yesterday.
Well, over the years, we've now seen that the tie actually helps you out more so than it hurts. I mean, it helped the Eagles out a couple of years ago. I think Cincinnati had a tie last year, right? Did Cincinnati have a tie
Was it last year?
No, it wasn't last year.
Yeah.
But the tie generally will help you out. Now, I know Seattle passed over Washington in the wild card race.
The tie hurt Washington.
The tie kind of hurt Washington. But in the end, you would imagine that I don't know that Seattle can keep this up. That's my thing. So I think the tie will end up helping Washington down the line more so than the tie generally helps more than it hurts both the teams. Yeah. But look, you saw a game that was 10-0. Washington jumps out. Give the Giants credit. They came back into that game. They took the lead, had a chance to win it in overtime. 58-yard field goal kind of falls short. But you saw 2 teams really understanding what that game meant. Now they're going to play in 2 weeks again. Washington has a bye this week, and then they play the Giants again. So they're going to have 2 full weeks of Giant preparation. They should really, if they don't win this next game, that's a bad sign for Washington.
That's the game where I think it's whoever wins that game is going to the playoffs no matter what in the NFC. I think that's the game. I don't see any of those 2 collapsing at that point. I know the Giants got Philly. And again, like this is where I think the tie helps them. Okay, you can afford to lose to Philly. You can still beat Washington. And I think who they got, the Vikings and the Colts. It just feels like now the path to making the playoffs helps the Giants because of the tie. And Washington, like you said, because if Seattle keeps faltering, that tie is going to help them. I mean, week 13, it doesn't help them. Seattle jumped them. But overall, you're right because Washington can finish 9-7-1, and if the Seahawks finish 9-8, well, you're taking the 9-7-1 team.
Yeah, the Giants, we kept wondering, where do they have 2 more wins on their schedule? They entered with 7 wins. Do they have 2 more wins on that schedule? Well, they got a tie yesterday, which is almost a win for them.
It is a win, essentially.
Right. So now it's almost if they can get 1 more win and get to 8 with that tie, will 8 wins be enough for them to be at least the 7th seed?
I think it's 9. I still think they need
9. The tie would be in the mix as maybe that kind of invisible 9, if you will.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, if you want to count that as a win, yeah, I would agree with you.
Now, it would be interesting if Seattle ends up passing them, and then the Giants-Washington game, whoever wins the second one, if they both end up with identical records with the tie, then the Giants or Washington, whoever wins that game, would go on.
This is my issue with Seattle right now.
By the way, don't leave out Detroit.
Oh, no, Detroit's still in it. I'll tell you another team don't leave out. I never thought I'd say this a month ago. The Raiders. They won 3 in a row. I can't believe it. I can't believe the Raiders are fighting.
The AFC path's a little bit more challenging.
Yeah, it is. But you're right. Don't leave out Detroit. They should have beat Buffalo, and they could be 6-6 in this mix right now.
Yeah, the Lions are playing really well right now, and their schedule, they've got Minnesota and the Jets, I think, coming up here.
Yeah,
So
those are two big games, but if they can beat Minnesota. They really can. And they can score enough to beat the Jets. And then you got Carolina, Chicago, Green Bay. I mean, think about this, Mike. I mean, Detroit can very much end up, what are they, 5-7? I mean, at worst, I actually think Detroit can end up 8-9, and maybe even 9-8 and get in.
Well, and that will be interesting. Okay, so if they're 8-9 and the Giants.
That's where the tie hurts. That's the tie right there.
Well, no, because if the Giants.
Well, the tie hurts Detroit.
Right. No, right. Because if the Giants were 8-1, they would get in.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, I had no problem with Brian Dable doing what he did yesterday. Everybody's like, all upset. Why are you playing for the tie? I'm like, the tie helps him. It significantly helps him because you didn't lose. I said the Giants could not lose Sunday. They did not lose.
Yeah, the tie is unappealing. I think after the game, I guess it was Jordan Raanan from ESPN asked Brian Robinson, what do you think about the tie? And no one really knows how to answer it, right? You don't want to say, well, we tied. That's great. No, tying doesn't feel great, but in the end, it generally will help you out. I think both those teams, will benefit if it comes down to that tie needing to be a factor. It will probably help them both out.
So when the tie happens, we were waiting for the Eagles locker room to open up, and I decided to make the jerk comment. I'm like, well, it's fitting they both tie because they're basically the same team anyway.
Yeah, well, it's funny because this division, it's like it was like apropos that those two teams would tie. It's like, here are these two teams trying to separate who's going to kind of get a leg up in the NFC East, and nothing happened. They basically played the game and are in the same exact spot they were. And it's funny because they play again in 2 weeks. So that game in 2 weeks becomes just that much bigger. But
that's going to be a huge game. I think that's one of the games that could be on a Saturday, too, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's one of the 5 games that could be moved to a Saturday.
Don't remember, but definitely the importance of that game just raised another level because now you're looking at a spot where only, where possibly the winner of that game makes the playoffs and the loser does not. But yeah. I still think that all 4 teams have a shot to get in from the NFC East.
Oh, I do too. I actually think this tie straightened the case of all 4 teams getting in. I want to say this too, Mike, because the Dallas Colts game was a lot closer than the final score indicated. I know they outscored them 33-0 in the fourth quarter, but I still think Dallas is really, really good. And I think it just seems like them and the Eagles are on a collision course. I'm not even talking about Christmas Eve. I feel like these 2 teams are on a collision course to meet in the playoffs at some point.
Well, right now, the way that the bracket is set up with Philadelphia 1 and Dallas 5, Dallas would play Tampa. If Dallas won that game and then the other 2 games played out, it would be Philly and Dallas in the second round.
Which would be insane, by the way.
Right, because the Eagles would play the highest seed out there, or the lowest seed. Dallas has the 5. Because Minnesota right now is the 2, San Francisco is the 3. Let's say they both took care of business. You would be eliminating the 6 and 7. So Dallas would be the highest seed remaining. The 2 and the 3, San Francisco and Minnesota, they would play. And then the winner of the Tampa Bay Dallas game would play Philly, who has the bye. So, yeah, you're looking at a matchup in the second round. Look, Dallas last night, game's tough. They're in a fight. And all of a sudden, the Colts just unravel. That fumble just turned that game completely around. Scoop, score, and then Mo Alley-Cox, he fumbled. Yeah. Then Ryan interception.
They have 30 fumbles this year as a team. That's incredible.
It really is. And look, they were in that game. They were, and it's funny because through 3 quarters, you're thinking, look, the Dallas fans were talking about the Eagles, how they couldn't beat Indianapolis, and
they couldn't beat them not convincingly through 3 quarters.
No, that's what I'm saying. And the difference between Philly, I think Philly just did not have a good offensive day against against the Colts, and the Colts have a pretty stringent defense, which Dallas saw last night. They scored a lot of points, but a lot of those points were from their defense scoring. Dallas, though, they have this really good defense, but the Colts are moving the ball. The Colts are getting points on the board, and you're thinking, man, is Dallas' defense here. I don't want to say getting exposed a little bit because people, I don't know how we haven't come to terms with some weeks the style of the game is just a little different and it changes the way you look for that week. Look, Dallas's defense is really good in the end at getting to the quarterback. That's what they do best. Matt Ryan, statuesque, stinks, can't throw the ball anymore, but they were moving the ball. They had yards in the air. They took some shots down the field, something they really don't do all that much. The kid Pierce made a couple nice plays. They have some weapons. They just don't have the quarterback play in Indianapolis right now. But Dallas, I thought Dak looked good last night. CeeDee Lamb had a good game. Gallup, they finally got him involved. He hasn't been
touchdowns last night.
Yeah, he has not been a big part of their offense. And then the two guys at back, I like the way they're using Elliott and Pollard. They're mixing those guys in way better than they have. And obviously, right now with San Francisco's issues, I think Dallas and Philly are the two top teams in the NFC. And it's just, what flavor do you like better? I mean, they're both very good. I don't know that one separates from the other when they play on that one particular day. We'll see. I mean, look, they're going to play on Christmas Eve. We'll see what that game, how much meaning it does or does not have. A lot of Cowboy fans were banking on the Titans yesterday to win that game.
And you know what?
They didn't get it.
And they're still shooting their mouths off. They're better than the Eagles. Well, guess what? You're not, because you didn't beat them. Oh, and by the way, the Eagles are up 2 games on you with a tiebreaker. So the Eagles can, both teams go chalk the next 2 weeks, the Eagles can clinch the NFC East in their building. And I guarantee you Nick Sirianni will want to do that.
One of my buddies is a Cowboys fan. I have a couple Cowboy fans in my mix. I don't know how this happened. Of the group, many are irrational. One is
a lot of them are irrational.
One is a rational fan, and he said yesterday, he admitted, Titans not winning that game really put a hurting on that Christmas Eve game. Look, the Cowboy fans were really dead set that the Eagles are not as good as they look. They're not as good as their record. They haven't beaten anybody, and therefore the Titans will beat them. The Eagles didn't only beat the Titans, they bamboozled them. They absolutely steamrolled them. And of all the games yesterday in this league, that may have been the most impressive win. You're facing a Titans team that many people thought was going to come in your building and win the game, and they never gave him a chance to breathe in that game. Now, I mean, Cincinnati, their win's impressive, of course, beating the Chiefs. But I've been one to say all along, that Chiefs team is not as good as people think they are.
They're a very good football team, but you're right. They're beatable.
I've been saying it on this show and my show. They're Patrick Mahomes. Other than Patrick Mahomes, they can't run the ball. Their receiving core stinks, and their defense is average. They had no business being favored in that game yesterday. Thank you that I nailed that one. That was the pick of the day. How do you have Kansas City, an average roster with a tremendous quarterback, a favorite on the road against a team that beat you the year before twice? Joe Burrow, the way that team was playing. Kansas City is not what we think they are. I think. I think they're a very good team with a great quarterback. The roster, though, is in. The Kansas City roster is in.
Fun stat for you with the Chiefs. In the year 2022, they have 4 losses. 3 are to the Bengals, 1 are to the Bills. And they're undefeated against everybody else.
They're good. Look, the Chiefs they're a good team. It's not a great roster. Look, if you this isn't a slight at Jalen Hurts by any stretch of the imagination, but if Jalen Hurts had Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Juju Smith-Schuster,
he pretty much had that last year.
Right, exactly. We saw that game already. So if that was his 2 weapons, I don't think he's having the year that he's having. That goes to show you what Mahomes means to that team, and that's why I think Mahomes could be a slight favorite to people voting in the MVP. Is they're going to say, well, Jalen Hurts has A.J. Brown and DeVonta Smith and Dallas Goedert.
You know what? Best quarterback on the best team in football is Jalen Hurts. Best player on the best team in football.
Yes, well, now my point is this. The fact that the Chiefs lost that game yesterday may now impact his standing.
Yeah. I will say,
if they would have won that game, I think he's still probably the leader.
I will say this.
Look at the odds.
I hate the if game, but I gotta play it. If Travis Kelce doesn't fumble, I think Patrick Mahomes drives them down the field and they take the lead and ultimately end up winning that game. But the Chiefs do have problems.
Yeah, look, they are Sal Powell does my show every Friday and at 3:00. And he had said on my show, this was a couple of years ago, we were talking about the Eagles. I think it was 2019, maybe. And he said, look, Michael, if your tight end is your best weapon, then your offense is limited. Like, you have limitations of what you can do with a tight end centric offense. Zach Ertz was the Eagles' best weapon. He was by far their best pass catcher. And that put that offense in a little bit of a box because you can only do so much with the tight end. That's not anything away from Travis Kelce. He's amazing, but he's not taking shots down the field. You're not running post patterns. You're not running, their wide receivers are so limited. Marquez Valdes-Scantling is wide open in the end zone. Mahomes hits him in the hands, and Valdes-Scantling drops the ball and falls on his face. Yeah. It's a ball that has to be caught 1,000 times out of 1,000, and Marquez Valdes-Scantling can't catch that pass because he's simply not good enough. Juju Smith-Schuster is good at what he's good at. He's a slot guy, not a lot of speed. Sky Moore, not ready. They lose Kadarius Toney. Kansas City just does not have enough weapons.
Mike Gill, always a pleasure having you on Good Morning NFC East. Unfortunately, I will not be joining you on the Sports Bash tonight because I got a season opener to prepare for today. Coach Kerr's getting ready to go tonight.
You guys are playing early in PA, huh?
Yeah, we are playing early. It's a week earlier this year. I don't know how to feel about that. I got to be honest with you.
I know Jersey, everybody's complaining here because the football schedule, they're trying to shorten all the seasons so that the kids have more time to kind of get their bodies right. But the football season just ended for the state. This year was the first year in New Jersey state history. Did you know this? That they played the state championships, the first time ever.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't ever remember them having a state
This was the first year that they played to true state champions. So they just finished yesterday, was the last day of the high school football season. And now basketball, I guess, will be starting in 2 weeks.
Yeah. It's crazy, Mike. Once again, I'll have to, obviously I'll have you on next Monday, but I'll see you on the Sports Bash. I don't think I'll be on till Friday, so I guess I'll talk to you then.
All right, man. Just give me a heads up.
Yeah, sounds great. Mike Gill, everybody, from Nice.